My name's Christina, and I work at Trelora Real Estate. I currently am located in Raleigh, North Carolina, and am the general manager here. And I started my real estate career with Trelora in Denver, which is where our hub is at, and that is also where Mike is located at.
Yeah, hey guys, my name is Mike Page, and I'm the manager of the buy team here in Denver. And this will be somewhat of a reunion for Christina and I, because even though we're a few thousand miles away, she and I worked pretty closely on the buy team here for about a year and a half before she moved out to Raleigh. So we're hoping to maybe have a little fun today and have you guys learn a little bit and just kind of chat a little bit about what it's like to buy and sell a house right now.
Absolutely. So I think one thing we can start off with, and one thing Mike and I were kind of chatting about before going live is, the differences in a sense from me being on the East Coast and him being on the West, or like how Mike said, a few thousand miles away. And it was kind of interesting, I guess, getting our different perspectives. And Mike, if you kind of want to jump in and just kind of explain what trends you're seeing and specific to Denver, specific to lending, and then we can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so I mean, I think overall the market here in Denver, at least in Denver Metro, is absolutely still a really, really strong seller's market. And I've got a couple of theories as to why that is, but for the second week in a row, active inventory, like the number of houses that are for sale in the 10-county metro, has actually gone down the last 2 weeks. And for this time of year, that's absolutely crazy. I mean, this is the time of year when kids are out of school, the weather's nice, people have spent all spring planting flowers and getting their house ready for the market. And they are just, that's not happening as much now. I mean, every house that goes on the market is getting under contract right away, and that inventory number just doesn't seem to be creeping up like it usually does this time of year. So I think probably the pretty low interest rates probably have a little bit to do with that, and then also maybe a lot of people that are just uncertain about the future are just kind of staying put and staying where they're at rather than testing the market and trying to find a new place. So I don't know, is it still a pretty strong seller's market where you're at, or is it more of a buyer's market?
I would say it's definitely still a strong seller's market. In my opinion of the market and the trends that I'm kind of seeing are something that you touched on. There's not as much inventory as there was last year. The days on market are the same. Even like the average house price has gone up a little bit, but that's relatively the same. It's just there's less to choose from because sellers are uncertain and they don't know what's going to happen in the next couple months. So they would much rather feel comfortable staying at home. So yeah, we're definitely kind of seeing that same trend out here. I have a couple buyers that I've offered on properties, and it's gone just as competitive as it would be normally this time of year, to where they have to put in several offers in order to get that property or come in, pretty competitively. So we're seeing that as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, looks like we just had our first question come in. So I'll answer it. It says, how are stay-at-home orders affecting the real estate market? And my answer to that is right now, it's not really affecting the market too much. I mean, I think back in March and April, when we were kind of in the height of the COVID pandemic, there was essentially showings shut down in most counties here in Denver Metro. We were very lucky if we could even do like a video tour or a virtual showing. But now it seems like most of the different restrictions have kind of lifted and things are getting back to almost normal. We're still not allowed to do open houses here, and that's been a little bit frustrating for some of our sellers. But again, with it being such a strong seller's market, I think some of them are realizing they don't really need an open house to sell to sell their house. It's like just price it right and put it on the market, and it'll fly off the shelf. So most of our sellers aren't too upset about that. And then I mean, we are taking different precautions at showings, like wearing a mask and wearing gloves and trying not to touch any of the light switches, and obviously you've got to touch the doorknobs and things like that, but just trying to touch as little as possible. And then a lot of different brokerages around here are requiring the showing agents and the buyer that are going into a house for a showing to actually sign a COVID disclosure. And most of the times, most of the time these are just kind of created by the brokerage or the lawyer that works for the brokerage. And it's just kind of a one pager that says, hey, look, I'm not experiencing any symptoms. I don't have a fever. I don't know anybody that has COVID, kind of so on and so forth. Just to make sure that we're kind of signing off on our own showing agents' health and our own clients' health, and not putting any of these sellers in danger for letting us in their home.
Yeah, to piggyback off of you, Mike, you bring up a good point. So like in North Carolina, there's some counties that are really strict with the regulations on open houses. So some counties are allowing it out here. Others are allowing it, but they still have showing restrictions. So you can only see a property, once an hour, or one person can go in every hour. And everybody's kind of doing the same thing out here. We wear masks, we wear gloves. We're trying to keep everybody as safe as possible, including all the agents. But another thing they did out here, and I don't know if they did that in Colorado, but we actually have our separate COVID addendum now that we can attach to offers when we submit. And basically what this says is it essentially protects the buyer and allows for an additional X amount of days. You can write in whatever day amount you like for closing. If anything were to be held up on their loan or any financial reasons, heaven forbid they were to lose a job or anything like that. So that's some precautions we've been taking out here as well.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Something I forgot to mention earlier, but a lot of the sellers are restricting their showing windows a little bit, in that sort of the standard has been an hour-long showing. And that way, if you're out showing a buyer 3 or 4 houses in a row, you kind of had a window to shoot for. That was in case one showing took a little bit longer or one was a little bit shorter. And now, I mean, we're seeing sellers and listing agents giving us 15 and 30-minute windows. And sometimes it's kind of tough. It's been a little bit of a challenge, just scheduling and just making things work out with drive times between showings and things like that. So that has been another kind of thing that we've noticed, and buyers get a little bit frustrated with that, I think, because if they really like a house, I mean, they want to spend an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours walking around and figuring out where their couch is going to go and figuring out where they need to mount the TV and all these things. And we're just seeing more often than not, we're having buyers that are really interested in houses, just having to go back and schedule a second and third and fourth showing just so they can spend the time they need to in the house before they pull the trigger on an offer.
Yeah, that's true. It looks like we got another question come in. It says, more people are starting to come out to list their homes. What does that mean? I'll go ahead and take this one, Mike. I think essentially I would like to think that means that we're trying to get back to some sort of sense of normalcy, right? At the beginning of this pandemic that happened, March and April, I had a lot of sellers that just stopped. They wanted to just hold. They didn't want to do anything. They wanted to see how everything plays out. But my thoughts on it is, I think as more people sit at home and kind of have that time that maybe they didn't have before, like, yes, of course, they're still working at home, they still have their 9 to 5, but they have that, they've gotten rid of that commute, right? They've gotten rid of that drive time. And so now they kind of are allowing their minds to wander and be like, okay, I'm maybe I should go ahead and list right now. You know, what is that going to look like? Or maybe I should go ahead and buy right now. So I would like to think that essentially that will get us back to somewhat of normalcy. I don't believe that we will be going into a buyer's market anytime soon. I think it's still going to be a strong seller's market and that inventory is going to be down. But as Mike touched on earlier, it's summer, you know, kids are out of school right now. This is normally the opportune time for people to go ahead and list their home and get the biggest bang for their buck when they do sell. And so I do anticipate that number to continually rise over the next couple months.
Yeah, and I think like one thing to add to that, as far as more sellers listing their homes now than maybe last month or the month before, is I think there was just so much uncertainty at the beginning that nobody really knew what was going to happen. And everybody, I think that's kind of human nature. When we're kind of uncertain about the future, we just kind of stay put and don't make any drastic decisions. And for anybody that was going to need to buy a new house if they sold their current house, they didn't want to do that because they didn't know what was going to happen with their job. They didn't know if home values were going to fall. It was
Right.
just so much uncertainty. I mean, we didn't know if here in Denver, I mean, when they announced that restaurants and bars and music venues and all those places were going to be closed, I mean, it was initially going to be an 8-week period, but at the beginning of that 8 weeks, we didn't know if that was going to be 8 months or a year. I mean, there was so much uncertainty that I think it just scared a lot of people away from selling. And as more and more things are getting back to normal and the future is looking brighter and brighter, I think people are feeling brave and willing to put their house on the market now.
Absolutely. And that brings up another good point. I did notice here in North Carolina that once we kind of entered into phase 2 and everything wasn't so locked down and things kind of slowly started opening, I noticed a lot of my sellers that were putting things on hold started calling me and be like, okay, I'm ready to have those conversations now, right? I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more confident what's going on. Let's go ahead and have that conversation. Even if I don't list for a month, I'm ready to kind of start the process and slow roll it a little bit.
Yeah, and we saw the same thing. I mean, March was a little slow, April was a little slow, but we just had so many people, both buyers and sellers, kind of in the pipeline that just weren't really ready to pull the trigger yet on either selling their house or getting out there to look at homes. And then it seemed like May rolled around, and I mean, we just hit the ground running. And then June was crazy. July, I mean, we're really picking up for the busy season now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a question from Jennifer. What do you see happening in the mountain communities in Colorado, specifically Frisco, we're looking to buy? So the mountain communities are tough. I think there's a little bit more uncertainty out there right now, just because employment is really based on tourism and all of the lodging out there and restaurants and skiing and mountain biking and all these things. I mean, we've got world-class mountains here in Colorado, and people come from all over the world, and they're just not coming. I mean, they didn't come for a long time, and slowly but surely those tourism numbers are kind of picking back up, but they're really nowhere near where they used to be. So I certainly wish I had a kind of crystal ball, but I do think ski season is going to happen this year. I think Vail Resorts and I can't think of the company that owns that does the Icon Pass, and they run Copper Mountain and Winter Park and a few of the other mountains, but I can't think that they're just going to, throw their hands up and give up on ski season happening. So I think that'll keep some of these mountain communities going a little bit. Airbnbs, I know are really big out there. So Jennifer, I don't know if you were planning on, using your property out there for personal use or Airbnb-ing it or a little bit of both. But, I do think slowly but surely the mountain communities will kind of get back to normal.
That was a great question, Jennifer. And Mike, I bet you're looking forward to get back to ski season? I know how many times you go a year.
Yeah, I am, but I recently picked up mountain biking this year, and there's a
Oh.
lot of similarities. You gotta like the thing I like about it most is you really gotta be like in the zone. Your mind can't wander at all when you're on a piece of metal going down a mountain. Like you gotta be totally in the moment. And I've absolutely, on my days off mostly I'm mountain biking these days. So knock
Yeah.
on wood, but no injuries just yet.
Thank goodness for that. We got another question. Somebody's asking, what defines a buyer's or a seller's market? So there's definite numbers out there, definite statistics where they say, if it's 7,000 homes versus 1,000 buyers, whatever. But in layman's terms, a simple explanation is in a buyer's market, buyers have more power, and in a seller's market, sellers have more power. So if buyers are out looking and inventory is low, then the sellers have more power, right? They can come back and they don't have to accept an offer right away. And then, the reverse. Mike, if you want to jump in on that. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, I think here in Denver, looking at just sheer numbers, a metro the size of Denver Metro, and I keep referring to the 10 county metro, but that's a good way for us to kind of look at statistics and digest them. But in a market this size, about 15,000 homes on the market at any given time is sort of a healthy balance between a buyer's market and a seller's market. And right now there's about 6,400 homes on the market in the 10 county metro. So that is way less than that 15,000 number. So it is still very much a seller's market. And yeah, to Christina's point, in a seller's market, you price your home right, you take great photos, and you put it on the market. And here in Denver lately, it's been about 9 days on market is the median days on market right now. And that's crazy to think you just put your house on the market and 9 days later, you're going to have an offer or maybe even multiple offers. And a couple kind of recent stories just to speak to, I guess, how much of a seller's market is in Denver right now. I was working this weekend for, kind of covering for my team, and I probably wrote 12 offers for different buyers, and we ended up getting 5 or 6 of them, but there was a few, mainly the ones in the 300, 400, 500,000 kind of lower price points, where we were up against 10 and 12 different offers, meaning 10 or 12 different buyers put an offer on the same house. So to Christina's point, if you're a seller in a seller market, you kind of just get to pick and choose which one you like the best and go with it. I've been at Trelora for 4 years and we haven't seen a buyer's market yet. I hope to, whoever's in my position, whenever that does come in 5 or 10 or 15 years, whenever that does come, I'm gonna kick him out for a day and write a few offers and hopefully have fun with some of these agents and say, hey, I remember when I was scratching and clawing to get people under contract, and now this is easy.
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking at some market stats for the 16 county MLS that we cover here in Raleigh. And yeah, the average days on market for May were 7, and we're projected to have 8 for June. Now, it doesn't always work like that, right? There are going to be some properties that do sit on the market a little bit longer, for whatever reason, but when it's in those hot spots, as I was mentioning earlier, I had one client that was trying to offer in this one particular neighborhood for a couple weeks, and we just kept getting beat out, so the sellers do have that power. And another note I wanted to mention too is, I think people kind of associate like bidding wars, like is a bidding war going to happen? Is it still a thing? Another thing I've kind of noticed as we're progressing and changing in real estate in 2020 is bidding wars don't really seem to be as much of a thing. They just want to look at all those offers, that are presented to them, they being the seller, and then just choose the best one. They don't want to go back and forth in negotiations. They just want to choose the one that's going to work for them. So I always encourage my buyers to, go in as high as you can go, as high as you're comfortable going, right? Let's make it super competitive and let's see what sticks, because the sellers essentially do have a lot of power still.
Yeah. I'm gonna rewind just a little bit. It looked like Jennifer maybe chimed back in and said that it's going to be her primary residence up there in Frisco. And yeah, Jennifer, I mean, I would say if you're feeling good about your employment, I don't know if you're working remotely or what, but if you're feeling good about your employment, I would say hit the search hard now, because there are certainly some people out there that maybe had a second home or just a property they Airbnb'd and they're not renting it out as often anymore. And there's certainly going to be more and more supply out there. For those people, like I said, that are selling second homes or investments. And I do think you may be able to get a good deal, get a good deal here this summer. And yeah, definitely contact my team. You can email me at mike@Trelora if you want to chat a little bit further tonight or tomorrow.
Awesome. It looks like we got another question, Mike.
Yep, it looks like we got one more. How is the pre-approval and lending process different during COVID? And Christina and I actually were just kind of chatting about this yesterday, I think it was. We're really not seeing a ton of difference in the lending process. We are seeing a lot of lenders are getting rid of some of their first-time homebuyer programs or their no money down or low money down programs. They're kind of doing away with those, but anybody that has rock solid income and assets, anybody that has a really good credit score, anybody that's got a lot of money for a down payment, I mean, the banks are looking at those as less risky loans. So they're still lending like crazy. And I don't know how many of you guys out there have been kind of watching interest rates, but they're as low as they've ever been, just about. And banks are just dying to lend people money. So again, if you feel really good about kind of your future employment and your situation and you've got good credit and all those things, then now is a perfect time to buy. And I think that's part of what's helping keep inventory so low here in Denver is there are a lot of buyers out there that they see 3% interest rates and that's like basically free money to a lot of people. So they're running out and they're saying, hey, maybe I wasn't quite ready to buy a house, but if I can lock in 3% for a 30-year mortgage, I'm going to hop on it and I'm going to buy this house right now instead of waiting until, next year. We had somebody got under, one of our buyers, we got him under contract on it was a luxury home over $1 million out in Evergreen. I believe he went under contract yesterday or the day before. And his lender gave him a 2.5% interest on a 30-year loan. I was blown away. I had never seen a number that low.
Wow, that's amazing. To kind of piggyback off what you're saying, Mike, we're pretty much seeing the same out here. I would say the only difference I'm seeing with lending is there were a lot of first-time home buyer programs or down payment assistant programs. And on my end, I've noticed a lot of those have kind of halted. There's one particular one, the North Carolina housing program out here. That one's still going, that one's strong, because that would always be a recommendation that I would give to my first-time home buyers, like, hey, there are options, right? If you don't want to do the typical conventional 20% down loan, check out these first-time home buyer programs. But that's the only change that I've seen with lending is a lot of those programs have kind of just taken a step back right now, deciding not to move forward. But there's still a few that's out there and there's still really good options.
Yeah, so I just wanted to take a quick minute and we're about halfway through. So I just wanted to make sure that we had a chance to reintroduce ourselves to everybody that kind of joined late. But my name is Mike Page, and I'm the manager of the buy team here in Denver. And Christina and I, we worked together probably 50 hours a week in the same room for about a year and a half, up until she moved out to Raleigh in January. So we're trying to have a little fun today. It's kind of a little reunion for the two of us, and figured we'd just chat about real estate and answer any questions that you guys had.
Absolutely. And my name's Christina Parker. Mike kind of gave an introduction on me, but yes, we started my real estate career in Trelora a little over 2 years ago, and started in Denver. And now I had the opportunity to move out and open our branch here in Raleigh. And so I'm the general manager here, but still practicing real estate, still actively involved, and still loving it. All right, it looks like we got another question. How are virtual showings versus live showings? You know, virtual showings were not something that I was unfamiliar with before the start of this. You know, we would have buyers from out of state say, hey, I want to see a property, but obviously I don't live in this state. How do we go about doing that, right? So we would set up a FaceTime or a Zoom, Google Hangouts, whatever would work best, you know, in order to accommodate that buyer. We did start doing that here, trying to implement that here at the start of COVID. And to be quite honest, I feel like it kind of fizzled out as restrictions lifted, you know, as we kind of entered into phase 2. Right now, we're really not doing any virtual showings, but it's because it's our buyers' request. We're still offering it to them, but most of them do want to see those homes in person, which is totally understandable. I mean, you are making one of the biggest financial decisions of your life, and, you know, to look at that via camera and not be able to really get a feel for the property, right? Like walk in and envision like, all right, my couch would definitely fit here, you know, or like it would look really good in this room, or I'm not quite sure what I would do with this small space. It's, you know, we do what the consumer wants, and time again, people want to see the home in person, you know? So, and if I had it my way and I was buying a house, I would want to do the exact same thing. You know, I think it would be very tricky to try to do it virtual, but there are ways now, thank goodness for technology, right? Which is, as I mentioned, both Mike and I would do this actually all the time, is, you know, set up virtual showings for our out-of-state clients. And now that just expanded a little bit more when there was restrictions put into place with COVID.
Yeah, and to add on that, there's a very, very small percentage of the population that would ever buy a house without stepping foot in it first. I mean, experienced investors, people that really know neighborhoods and areas of town really well. I mean, those are probably the exception, but in March and April, when we were only doing virtual showings, I mean, our business almost came to a halt. We
Right.
were writing offers here and there and getting people under contract here and there. But to Christina's point, people want to go in, they want to see, okay, is my couch going to fit here? Is my mom's, you know, antique dining room table going to fit in this dining area? You know, there's all these things that, I mean, yeah, a FaceTime tour is great. A video is great. Even these Matterport tours where you can kind of click through and virtually walk through the house to get a feel for the flow and all of that. Those are all great, but I mean, if you're the average house in Denver is 500,000. If you're forking up $500,000, you're going to want to put your own eyes on the house and not rely on technology. So it was kind of a good Band-Aid for when we had to do it, but I know all of my clients and all of my showing agents and everyone on my team is really, really happy that in-person kind of regular showings are back.
Absolutely. And to, you know, kind of tack on to that, there was a time as well when we were trying to do virtual open houses. And, Mike, I don't know what your experience or what the showings agents experiences were with trying those, or anybody over in the Denver team, but you know, again, people want to see the house in person, right? But as I mentioned before, we do still have restrictions in some counties here to where open houses are not allowed. They're just, it's not allowed. And if it is allowed, it's going to be really spaced out. And so the way that I'm kind of viewing real estate right now is open houses are great. We'll absolutely try them. We'll see if we get a buyer in the door. But showings is going to be the most important thing, and we're still going to abide by the restrictions and the safety of other people.
Yeah, and open houses are not allowed here either right now, but
Oh, that's right, you said that.
I certainly don't think it's been detrimental at all to any of our sellers. I mean, for the most part, and I know some people might not want to hear this, but open houses, you're going to get a lot of looky-loos that are just your neighbors and they're curious to see if your house is better than their house, or you're going to get people that probably can't afford your house and they just want to like, dream a little bit and daydream and walk through it and just wish they could afford your house. And you're just, I mean, the quality of lead is not great at an open house. Now, realtors aren't going to tell you that because they absolutely love getting buyers from open houses. Because if Christina walked into my open house that I was hosting and she couldn't afford this $1 million house, but she could afford a $500,000 house, then I would sell her on myself. And I'd say, oh, Christina, let me set you up on an MLS search. We'll get you out there. We'll find you something that you can afford. Oh, do you need a lender? Oh, I've got you. So, I mean, I think very few buyers actually buy a house that they walk into an open house for. Now, they might use that realtor to buy a different house later, but for the most part, our business is still cranking on all cylinders, even without open houses.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it looks like we got a question in from Jim. Is there an advantage regarding interest rates to 15-year versus 30-year? Yeah, I mean, those are, that's a good question. I mean, typically a 15-year is going to be a little bit higher. You're going to have definitely a higher monthly payment because there's fewer years to stretch out the loan. And then on a 30-year loan, obviously your payment's going to be a little bit lower. But I mean, for right now, I mean, interest rates between 15-year and 30-year are both really, really low. So depending on what you want your kind of target monthly payment to be and how long you want to be locked into the loan, I mean, that'll kind of determine where you want to be with your mortgage length.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say right now there's definitely, from what I'm seeing, not much of a difference between a 15 versus a 30 year. It seems to be interest rate is pretty much the same, and just whatever you're looking for in your loan terms, if that could be met with a 15 year, then more power to you. It looks like we got another question here. With so many people unemployed by the effects of the virus, do you see a drop on home prices in the next 9 to 12 months caused by mortgage defaults? I mean, I personally don't. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what it's going to look like even 6 months from now. And I think anybody that thinks that they know what it's going to look like in 6 months from now is really just trying to bluff their way through it, to be honest. Real estate is always ever changing. We can try to predict what it's going to look like, but we won't ever actually know. But I guess I'm optimistic, right? I'm hoping that with people losing their jobs and being unemployed, that this will not last forever, and I'm hoping that we can just chalk 2020 up to a really trying year, and that unemployment opportunities will come and people will be able to get those jobs and start going back and looking for houses if that's what they would like to do. But you know, those are kind of my thoughts on it. Like I said, I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't want to pretend like I do and that I can anticipate what's going to happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, Christina, I don't have a crystal ball either. But if I did, I always tell people if I could predict the future, I wouldn't be in real estate. I would be in Vegas, and I would and I would get rich really quick, and then I'd be retired and on to the next thing. But here we are. But yeah, I mean, as far as what's going to happen in the future, I mean, I've got to believe that with so many tens of millions of Americans that have either lost their job or been put on furlough or taken a pay reduction, or they're working fewer hours than they used to. I mean, I've got to imagine eventually that is going to catch up to the housing market. Now, I think there are a lot of mortgage forgiveness programs. There's the stimulus checks that went out. I mean, there's a lot of things kind of that I think are great for now, but are just maybe delaying the inevitable. That, hey, look, at some point we can't just keep printing money, and we can't just keep pushing everything off to the future. Eventually, somehow, the current economic situation is going to have to affect the housing market. So, I mean, selfishly, me working with buyers and me telling you guys all my horror stories and how hard it is to get buyers under contract these days. I mean, selfishly, I hope I hope it affects real estate sooner than later, in the sense that, I mean, I think prices have been pretty crazy here in Denver for at least the 4 years that I've been at Trelora. So it might be good if we saw a little bit of a market correction or a market reset. The thing I tell people about here in Denver, though, is there's two things that aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So I think Denver's always going to be a safe bet. And Christina's laughing because she's probably heard me say this on the phone probably 100 times, but 300 days of sunshine a year, that's not going anywhere. And the Rocky Mountains are not going anywhere. So, I mean, I think Denver is, I don't want to say recession proof, but Denver's a fantastic place to live. And I think whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, or the market's going up or it's going down, I mean, I think Denver's always going to be a really attractive place to live. So I don't think prices are ever going to fall through the floor, but it would be really nice if we were having this conversation again in December or even next April, and buyers just had 10,000 houses to choose from or 12,000 houses to choose from. I mean, that's a little bit healthier of a real estate market anyway. So my fingers are crossed that the crystal ball says, yeah, at some point this is going to have to affect the real estate market.
Well, and to mention too, so Denver's market has been crazy for, like how Mike said, he's worked at Trelora for 4 years, and it has been crazy that entire time. It's been super competitive. I would call myself lucky enough to kind of see the flip of the coin a little bit here in Raleigh and in Durham, where what I like to tell my clients when I'm working with them is like, our market right now reminds me of how it did in Denver 3 years ago. We're ramping up. And it's just because a lot of people want to move here. I actually have 3 clients right now that are moving from Denver. I know how much you love Denver, Mike, but are moving from Denver over to Raleigh, and so I think when it comes to big metropolitan areas, I guess we'll just see how that kind of affects the housing prices, but I still think there's going to kind of be an upward trend for a little bit.
Yeah. And this wasn't really part of the question, but you talking about that kind of just sparked a little thought in my head. I've had some conversations with friends because, I mean, a lot of my friends are between 25 and 35. They work downtown. They've got, girlfriends or fiancés or whatever that also work downtown. And yeah, they love to get out to the mountains, but they really like all the bars and restaurants and sports and concerts and everything that downtown kind of has to offer. Mm-hmm. And with March and April and everything being shut down, with most restaurants only doing takeout, no sporting events, no concerts, a lot of people working from home. I mean, I'm curious to see how COVID affects basically living in more urban areas like downtown Denver
Right.
versus somewhere out in the suburbs like Parker or Highlands Ranch, because I think if there are fewer restaurants and bars open, there are fewer social activities and fun things to do in the evenings and the weekends. Fewer people are required by their employer to actually go into the office. I mean, I'm curious to see what the dynamic is going to be. Are we going to see a mass exodus of people from downtown Denver and saying, you know what, like downtown is not what it used to be. There's a lot of, I still have to deal with all these bad things and I don't get as much of the good. Are we going to see housing prices in the suburbs go way up because we're going to see people like, hey, I still want to live in and around Denver, but I don't need to be right near Union Station or right in Capitol Hill or right anywhere. I want to be close enough so I can go when I need to, but without having to go to the office every day. I get to work from home. I'll just get a big house with an office in Highlands Ranch and, live a little bit more of a, I guess, peaceful lifestyle. a little bit quieter than, hearing, car horns honking at 2 a.m. and dealing with that kind of stuff.
It's interesting that you say that. That's something I actually have not thought about before, but would be interesting to see if that actually transpires. I know out here we have our downtown area, but then there's, a whole bunch of little towns or even surrounding cities that are making their own downtown area, to attract people to go there, right? It will be interesting to see, will those people that are in the middle of downtown, if things do continue to change, or like I can get more bang for my buck, being 20 minutes away or 30 minutes away from my office, which I would have never done before. But if I can work remotely now, why not?
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, we were kind of thrown for a loop, just like every other company. I mean, we weren't immune to it. A lot of our, a lot of our learning and a lot of our teamwork really happens when all 5 members of my team are in the same pod, in the same office. And we kind of had to quickly figure out, okay, we've got to figure out our phones. We've got to figure out, how we're going to manage email. We're going to figure out how we're going to communicate between each other. But I think we're a testament, and a lot of companies are a testament that, hey, look, maybe these big office buildings with these expensive rent payments aren't necessary for us to run our business.
Right.
So I think, I mean, not to get too political, but I mean, I think the environment's doing great because of not as many people are stuck in traffic all day and having to drive downtown. Everybody's got a little bit more free time because they don't have to sit in traffic an hour each way, so they can spend more time with their family and their kids and all those things. So I'm really curious to see. I know we're only in residential real estate, but maybe one day we'll get into commercial. But I'm curious to see what the long-term effects of COVID are going to be on commercial real estate. I mean, some of these buildings in Denver are just floor after floor of accounting firms, oil and gas companies, finance firms, real estate firms like ours. Like, if companies can realize, hey, we're still serving our clients well, and we're still we're still doing great, then do we really need that office? And I think once companies start pulling out of office buildings, then I think you may see that affect the residential real estate market in some of those more urban areas.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we got another question in. How are closings affected? I'll go ahead and start with this one, Mike, because I am seeing a drastic change in closings. So how it would work normally is that you would go in North Carolina, there's a closing attorney that's involved in the process, and they're required to be involved. And what they do is they draft all the closing documents, pull your deed, put together the final figures, and kind of coordinate with the buyer's lender. And typically what you would do is you would go and sign in person, had to be a wet signature. So Here, they don't really have it to where buyers and sellers sit at the same table. You know, they actually have it separated. But now what we're seeing is more and more people and more closing attorneys' office are asking that people don't show up to closing and that they drive through. They literally, I'm working with several closings attorneys right now that say, you know, go ahead, pull your car up, give us a call. We'll run the documents out to you. You sign them, we'll take them back and we'll fund it. So in regards to what the actual closing process looks like, that's been very different. And then with closings in general, you know, with dates being pushed or anything like that, I'm not seeing anything too different there. Essentially, if we've got a set date in a contract, it's pretty much set that we're going to close that day. And the only thing that really holds that up is if the lender's backlogged with anything.
Yeah, and I'll chat about the actual like closing day in a minute, but to your point, the only real effect that we've seen on closings is there have been some lenders that, and I don't know if they're just the companies that haven't really figured out the whole work from home thing or what's going on, but we have seen a few of our closings have to get pushed by a day or two just because these lenders are saying, hey, look, we don't have all the paperwork ready in time. We don't have the loan finalized in time. And they don't really have an excuse other than just manpower. And I don't know if it's just too many loans and not enough bodies to underwrite those loans, but for the most part, lenders are sticking to our kind of standard 30-day time frame here in Denver, but we have had a few that had to push by, you know, just a handful of days. And then, I mean, as far as the actual closing goes, it's a little bit hard to keep track of because it seems like every title company, and there are hundreds of them just here in Denver, but every title company kind of has their own processes and procedures. So some companies, they'll, like Christina said, you just drive up and don't even get out of your car and sign a couple documents and you're good to go. Other title companies still want you to come in and sign everything. To Christina's point, we've been specifically told by a few title companies, like, hey, I know you're the agent, but you are not considered you're not considered an essential person to this signing. So we'll send you your document that you need to sign electronically, but we only want the buyer here. We don't want the lender here. We don't want the realtor here. We don't want anybody but the buyer here. So that's been a little weird because you want to be there for your client. But we just have to say, like, look, I guess text me or call me if you need anything because I'm literally not allowed in.
Yeah. That has been an interesting change for me to just kind of accept personally. You know, I want to see off all of our clients at the end of the deal and, you know, before COVID, give them a high five, you know, or give them a hug and congratulate them. And we do, you know, we are forced to take a back seat, which makes complete sense. I'm working with a closing attorney that I work with quite frequently that is on the 10th floor of a building, and you can't even get up the elevators unless they come down and grab you. So you have to wait in the lobby, and then they'll come down and they'll bring you up. Like the elevators don't work unless you have a key card. So that has been drastically different. And to touch on your point too, you know, I said with lending, I guess, you know, I'm not seeing too much of a difference, but the North Carolina contract is different than the Colorado contract. It's automatically written into the contract that there's a 2-week period that closing can be pushed. And it's not something that buyers and sellers, you know, have to sign and amend to agree upon. It's literally if the defaulting party says, hey, I need more time, we have to give that person more time. And so, you know, you mentioned you're still seeing the average of 30. I would say our average that we're kind of seeing right now is between 40 and 45 days for closing.
Okay. And so are you still writing 30-day contracts, or are you just writing it 40 or 45 days because you know that's how long it's going to take?
To be honest, I check with my buyer's lender. I've just been starting to, because before I was writing 30-day contracts, and then the buyer's lender would be like, hey, listen, so like, no, we need at least 40 days. So now I just check with them, and they're pretty upfront and honest. And a lot of them do state, hey, we're working at home, so give us that couple days leeway. So right now I'd say I'm landing kind of in the sweet spot between 37 and 40 days, and hoping that we don't have to utilize that 2 weeks that's already built into the contract.
Yeah. And I mean, another good thing I think that's come of COVID that hopefully will stick for the long term in real estate is we are seeing a lot of lenders and a lot of title companies, because when a buyer goes to a closing, they've got their loan documents to sign, and then they've got their title documents to sign, and they're all signed at the same time, but they're kind of separate. And we are seeing a lot of lenders and title companies let our buyers sign more of those documents electronically beforehand, and then just signing the 1 or 2 documents that need a notary. So closing times have actually shrunk. And I mean, I've got pretty strong opinions about this, and Christina, I'm sure, has heard me say this before, but I mean, I think all closings should be electronic. I mean, we can do everything from our phones and our tablets and our laptops these days. Why should signing for a house be anything different? I mean, anybody that's bought a house before or been in a closing room before knows that it's really just a lot of signatures on a lot of really boring documents. And if your realtor did a good job throughout the entire transaction, there shouldn't be any surprises on closing day anyway. I mean, your realtor should be going over everything with you well beforehand. You should know exactly how much money is due. You should know exactly when your first mortgage payment's going to be, so on and so forth. Like, why are we making people go in person to sign anyway? I mean, I think COVID will have a good effect on that, in that maybe it'll speed up the process of saying, hey, look, let's just do electronic closings. We do everything else electronic these days. Let's just push real estate into the current times.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would like to see that happen at some point in time, or at least, have the seller and buyer have an option, to do that. If this is the 5th home that they bought and they're like, I know all this, I've done this a gazillion times, it feels like, and then allow those first time home buyers to be like, no, I still need that hand holding. I want everything explained to me in person. So I just double check, triple check what I sign. So hopefully COVID will encourage that or move that along sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, I think we're gonna kind of wrap things up. I really appreciate all of y'all joining us, and for anybody that joined late, my name is Mike Page, and I'm the buy team manager here in Denver. And Christina and I used to work together here in Denver before she moved to Raleigh. But we're just gonna start these video series, and I don't know how often we're gonna do them, every month or so, and we'll have different topics. And today we just wanted to kind of focus on what it's like to buy or sell a house right now, kind of on the back nine, I guess, so to speak, of COVID, and how things have been affected. And I'm sure if you guys want to write in with any future topics, we could definitely spend an hour on those topics here at some point in the next month or so.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, if anybody has any recommendations on what they would like to hear, real estate agents talk about, or what you need more knowledge on, let us know in the comments, because we would love to give you all the information that we have on the subject.
Yeah, well, I hope everybody has a great night and a safe 4th of July, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye, guys.